Hello, and welcome to the third part of the series. And in this tutorial, I'll be walking you through the Xano databases and understanding how the Xano booking API endpoints work. Now, for those of you who is familiar with Xano and understand how function stack works and how the booking API request works as well, then you can safely skip over to the next tutorial. It's because we are not going to be working with Wized and Webflow in this specific video. We're just going to be walking through the Xano setup. So I'm going to start off with the bookings table first. Nothing that you don't already understand here, but I'm just going to quickly walk through it anyway. Okay, so we have our first name, we have ID created at timestamp column here, and then we have our first name, last name, then we have our contact number, email, arrival status. So this is the arrival status uh, for your table that has shown up or hasn't shown up or has canceled. So this is so it's basically a select field essentially. And then we have our booking status for the ones that has shown up or the ones that hasn't. And then we have booking method here. Booking method, how did the user book for this, or how did the customer book for this? Would it be online? Would it be Facebook, phone, text, etc.? And then we have here added by staff and then last modified by staff. So this is basically the staff members that are currently working at the venue. So at the moment, the long list is actually pretty short. So the staff is only just me, but ideally, if you have more colleagues of yours, you would be able to see if this record was added by a staff. If not, was it added online? It must have been another source. We also have a separate column where we check to see if one of the staff has edited any of the existing records. So let's say if I were to tinker around with a specific record, we are going to make sure that our system automatically detects that and then notes that down. So that's what this field is here for. All right, then we have the last modified on. So basically, this is connected to this field over here. So whenever you have a staff recording, editing record, we also make sure to create a timestamp for that. Okay, then we have our date booked. So this is the date that the booking was made. And then we have the arrival date, the date that the customers are going to be showing up. And then we have our arrival time, the number of people booked, and the number of people that has arrived on the day. Then we have our table number, and then we have the area. Then we have the area that where we want to sit our customers. And then we have our special request and notes. And that's it. That's all that we have for our bookings. Now, just a quick one, special requests and notes. The special request is for the customers. So whenever they find themselves pushing in for a booking, we ask them if they have any special requests. The notes, on the other hand, is for our staff. So let me show you what that looks like in the UI. So when a customer is making a booking, that's where the special request comes in. Then we have notes. So let me show you what the notes is for that to work. So let's say that we have one of our staff members who is trying to currently edit a current record. So we ask them to make a note. And this note is for internal use only. So your notes can be only viewed by other staff members. So yeah, that's what notes is for. So yeah, that is it for our bookings database. So let's jump over to our colors database. Now, the colors here, think of it as a way of adding all the elements that requires colors. And so we have all these elements here: confirmed, pending, Facebook, online, and let me show you how that correlates with the UI. So you'll notice that we have these badges here, and each and every badge here has a specific color to them. So that's why we have a separate table on Xano that records the hex code of each of these colors. So we have a hex code for the text color. We have a hex code for the background color as well for that badge. So you'll notice that we have a few of those badges here. Now, you're not only limited to these badges, you can expand more if you want to. And that's exactly what I've done here on this Xano database here. So I've added in what elements those are, and then I've also added the description for where these elements are actually used in. So it's clearer to the developers. And then we have a background color, and then we also have a text color. So yeah, that's what the colors are used for. And then what we do is that in the function stack, we kind of make sure that the function stack targets the correct element based on whatever the circumstances are, and then extracts the background color and the text color. Now, this is something that we're going to learn just right now, actually. So that's that. That concludes us with the whole database walkthrough. So we can finally head over to our API request, and we are only going to be focusing on setting up our get bookings. So let's click on that. Now the get bookings is quite massive. The function stack is really huge, but don't get intimidated by this. This is actually extremely easy to set up. It's a very tedious, but very easy to understand as to what's happening. So firstly, we have our inputs here of page number, per page, and then type of. So obviously you know what page number is for, you know what the per page is for. So page number is basically trying to figure out which page number of data we need. And then we have per page. So we want to specify how many items we want per page. And then we have type of. So the type of is basically for this right here. You'll notice that in the actual dashboard, we have two type of bookings. So we have our upcoming bookings, and then we have our all bookings. So that's what we're doing. In the actual application, we're actually utilizing the same exact request, which is this one right here. We're actually communicating with the same API endpoint. So that's what this type of is basically it does. So, which is why we have this conditional put into place. We check what exactly type of bookings are you looking for? Are you looking for upcoming bookings or are you looking for all bookings? So that's what the type of is to be used for. So yeah, now that I explained what the condition here is for, so if I click on the condition itself, you will notice that the type of is basically upcoming bookings. By default, we check if it's upcoming bookings. If it's not upcoming bookings, then the other option that we do is all bookings. It's really that simple. So that's what we do. If the type of is upcoming bookings, then we do this. And else, if it's something else, then we make sure that we do something different. Now, for the purpose of this walkthrough, what I'm going to do is, for sake of simplicity, I'm just going to disable everything. And yeah, so I'm just going to disable everything. I'm going to open this up. And I'm going to go ahead and clone this. Bring this over here and then clone this as well. And bring this here. Okay, perfect. That's all we need. So let's just focus on these two because these two is essentially what we all need. We don't need anything else. Okay, so what we're firstly doing is we are querying all our records from our bookings database. It doesn't matter if it's upcoming bookings or all bookings because the functionality is exactly the same. We just have just tiny bit of differences between those two. Apart from that, everything else is the same. So if I were to click on the query all records, the first thing you'll notice that we have applied a custom query filter. So we need to make sure that the arrival date isn't in the past. It's so that's what we're doing. We want to make sure that the arrival date either belongs to the present or the future. We don't want bookings from the past. That's the criteria that we have for our upcoming bookings. So that's the filter that we've applied here. Now, if I head over to output here, okay, so you'll notice that we have quite a few stuff going on here. Let's check. So we have the return type to list. I think that's what is set to by default anyway. And then we also have a sorting that the booking's arrival date is set in an ascending order. So if I take you to the actual booking here, you'll notice that we have all the dates here that are closer to the current date right now is all on the top. And then as I gradually keep going down, you'll notice that the dates keep moving further away from the current date right now. So that's what we're doing here. So yeah, super important to make sure that you have that sorting here. That is if you need that sorting. And then we have our enable paging. Of course, we need to enable this because you might have noticed that we have our, whoops, we have our load more data right here. So as you scroll down, we're fetching more items, and that is basically part of Xano's pagination. So yeah, that is something that you have to be mindful about. You need to turn the enable paging on, and then you can also set the per page items over here, up to you. But we're manipulating this from Wized, so you don't have to worry about this too much. By default, you can put this to whatever amount value you want to. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and save that. Okay, perfect. So now, what we're gonna do is rather than bookings, I'm going to just make sure that we have upcoming bookings here. So let's disable this and just see what we get in return right now. So let's say if I put in page number 1, per page, let's say 30, and type of, let's say, upcoming bookings. And obviously we need to provide an auth token as well, or else this is not going to work. So let's run this. So yeah, there you go. You'll notice we're just at the moment we are just returning the query all records. So it returns exactly what we have on our database. So you see all these objects being returned here in an array, exactly what we have on our database. So yeah, that's great. Now we also have this function here, for each loop function. Now, the reason why we have this function is because whilst we do have the existing data, we want to manipulate that data to be able to produce more stuff that we want to. So let's explore what those are. So I'm going to open this up, and you'll notice that it's quite a long list of stuff. Basically, a lot of stuff happening here, but it's just a repetition of various things. We want the same function, but applied to various elements. That's what's going on over here. Okay, so we have a for each loop function. So if I click on here, you'll notice that we have a list of upcoming bookings. So that's the variable right here. And then we are using the dot notation items because we are looping through each and every item that is inside this variable. And then we're returning it as a single item. And then once it's returned as a single item, then these following functions are applied to that item. So what is the first function that we're applying? So we are creating a variable. So as you can see, I'm calling this variable full name. Why are we calling this full name? Because if you go into our database here, you'll notice that we have this full name field here, and it's essentially we're combining the first name and the last name. Now, if you notice carefully, we actually don't have a full name field. We have the first name field and the last name field. So that's why we are creating a separate variable for the full name. So that's exactly why we're creating this variable. And then for this variable, we're applying a value of item.firstName because the item from here has the first name. So we want to make sure that we grab the first name and then we apply the the filter of concat. So concat is what essentially adds the first name and the last name together. So if I click into this, we're using the filter of concat, and then we're applying the value of item.lastName, and then we add a space bar so that there is a space between the first name and the last name. So that's what this does, and we make sure that this new value is stored in this variable of called full name. The second one is basically updating this variable. So we want to make sure that the item.fullName is actually added. So we make sure to have this full name that is inside the item variable, and make sure that the full name variable value is inserted into this variable. And why exactly are we doing that? So so that this gets added when we are returning the response. So if I put in upcoming bookings here, actually, wait, no, let me just quickly check. Oh yeah, so it is upcoming bookings, yeah. So now if I run this again, you'll notice that we are now getting the full name. Previously, we weren't getting our full name. So let me just disable this. So if I run this again, you'll notice that we had bunch of information coming through, but now we don't have this. We have our first name, we have our last name, but we don't. So what we're going to do is actually, you know what? I'm going to disable all of this. Okay, so I've went ahead and I've disabled all the functions now. So there we go. We only have the full name for our for each loop function here. So if I go ahead and run this, now you'll notice that we have this key here of full name. So this key is basically coming from this function over here. That's why it's super important to explicitly run this function of update variable. So what you're doing is basically adding this full name. So you're adding this full name to this here items. That's essentially what you're doing. Now we have another one. So let's activate this over here. So let's just activate this. So again, it's the same exact principle as our full name, but this time we're working with adjust arrival date. So let me show you the current arrival date that we're receiving. Actually, let me just close this. So if I run the debug again, so let's look for the arrival date. So as you can see that the arrival date is in a format that I don't actually prefer. I would like to have it in a European date format. So with the date first, the month second, and then we have the year. So that's exactly what we're going to do. And we are going to later apply that arrival date over here. So this field over here, as you can see, this is the format that we want to set this in. So if I go ahead and activate this, so let's open up the first one. We first create an arrival date, and then we apply a filter to this of a format timestamp. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with how to format the timestamp and how you can, uh, why are we applying this specific format in this way, I'm going to link the Xano tutorial for that in the description. So please refer to that because they explain it really well. But yeah, this is the date format that we are after. It has to be done in a very specific way. So yeah, we're applying that filter, and then what we do is we want to make sure that when we create that newly adjusted arrival date, we want to return that arrival date in our object. So that's what we're doing here. So if I run and debug this now, you'll notice that our arrival date has been replaced here. Instead of creating a new key, I was targeting this key right here because it doesn't make sense to create a new key for that object. So that's why I was targeting this field. So what Xano has done is it found this existing key and replaced its value with the new modified value. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, and then we have the adjust date booked. Again, it's the same story, so I'm just gonna skip over this. But let me just quickly switch this on and run the debug again. So you'll notice that it has modified the date booked now to our European date format. So that's what it has done. Then let's see what we have. We have last modified on. Okay, so this one is a little interesting. So I'm going to switch this on and switch this on as well. Now for here, you'll notice that we have a create variable for last modified on. So if you remember correctly, this is for the column where the timestamp is recorded for the time when the staff member edits a specific record, and we record a timestamp on that. Now, however, you will notice that not all records have the last modified on, which is why we have added in a conditional. So, so if the last modified on isn't empty, then you should return the modified on date. And then if you click on this one over here, you'll notice that we have our date here. And we have applied the date format as well. So let's check the debug here real quick to see what that looks like. So yeah, you'll notice that the last modified on is null. Okay, so it's null for a few cases here. But yeah, I assure you that this works. Wait, am I actually looking at the right thing? Last modified on. Okay. Oh yeah, there we go. So we do have one record here that has that date, and the others here are null. So that's what the last modified is on for. Okay, and then we have another one here, which is called needs reviewing. So now this is kind of made up here. You'll notice that we have this field called needs reviewing. So we actually don't have this field needs reviewing. I've made this up. So this is based on table number. So we are creating this variable and we're calling it needs reviewing. And the value for this is basically a Boolean value. So we are checking if that specific record has a table number or not. If the table number is empty, then it returns true. And if the table number, if it does have a table number, then it's returned to false. The reason why we set it up that way is if I show you here, basically you'll notice that we need it for this field here, needs review. So this is for the staff members who needs to quickly check if there are any records that doesn't have a table number assigned to them. So they can apply this filter here, needs review, and they can see that there are 2 records at the moment that needs reviewing, and that is because their table number is blank. So we quickly assign a table number to them and make sure that, the table number has been assigned. So that's what needs reviewing is for. So let's check on the debug what that looks like. So yeah, there you go, needs reviewing. So it's false. It doesn't require reviewing because it already has a table number. And if it doesn't have a table number, then it's true, set to true. So hopefully that makes sense. And then we have another interesting one, and I'm going to switch this on. So this has yeah, these 3 actions right here. Now we want to grab our booking status. So first thing that we do is we get record from our colors database. So we're targeting the element and we're targeting the element field, and the field value that we're looking for is the item booking status. So the booking status, if you remember, could be confirmed, could be canceled, could be arrived. So based on what the value is for the booking status, we try to look for that element inside the colors database. And then based on what we find, we then update our variable. We're not creating a variable, we're updating our variable. So this one is a little bit different than the ones that we were previously reviewing. So what are we doing here? So we're saying that we have an existing variable, which is item, but we're adding this new key here. So we're calling it booking status background color, and its value is basically coming from here, booking status background color. So it's coming from this variable here. Hopefully that makes sense. It takes a while to wrap your head around it, but if you sort of practice this out, it starts to make sense. And then we have the same for this variable here, but this is for our text color. So let's see what that looks like in our debugger here. So now you'll notice that we have our booking status background color, which is a hex code, and then we have the booking status text color, which is also another hex code. And because this is referring to the booking status, let me show you what that refers to in our UI, which is this one right here. So this is the text color, and then you have the background color for the badge as well. So that's where these colors are coming from. So that's how we're setting this up. Okay, so we have the same for this others as well, which is for the booking method. So I'm not going to go through this, but I'm going to switch this on. And then we have another one for area as well. Okay, and now we have a get record. So these are all the colors. So I'm just skipping all that. Now we're coming over to users. So the users, quite a lot of stuff happening here. Let's see what we got here. Okay. Now, you'll notice that we have staff first name, staff last name, and staff full name. And then so basically, we're using all these functions here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, just to figure out the item added by staff name. So if you remember correctly, on our UI, we have this field here, last modified on, last modified by, added by. This is the one. So this is what we're trying to set. So we're trying to find out if this record has been added by any staff members. In this case, as you can see, that this record has been added by a staff member, this record right here. So that's essentially what we are doing over here. Now, but before we can get to this, we need to make sure that we get first we set a function of get record from users. So we're using the field name of ID. So that is for the users. And for the field value, we're using item added by staff. So if the value exists, then that's great. We're storing that value inside the user's variable. And then based on that, we create a variable. So we're creating the variable where we try to get the first name. Um, so yeah, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get the first name, and then we create a separate variable, and then with the intention of grabbing the last name. Then once we have grabbed the first name and the last name, then we try to create a new variable and call it staff full name, and then we try to grab the value of the staff first name and the staff last name. And then we create a conditional to make sure that if the staff full name is not null, then make sure to update the variable added by staff name. This is the key that we add in our API. And so yeah, and if the staff name is null, and if it is null, then we make sure that the text is basically null. So let's see what that looks like. So we're basically looking for added by staff name in our API. So let's run that real quick. So added by staff name, this is empty. So that means we don't have anything for this. But if we keep scrolling, eventually we are bound to find something. So there we go, added by staff name. So it works. So that's essentially what we're doing. Okay. Now we're almost close to the end. So let's activate this. And okay, so this is the same story for our users here as well. So what are we trying to get here? Staff full name. Aha, okay, I see. So we're again carrying out the same functions to get the last modified by name. So the first one was added by staff name and then last modified by name. So as you remember, this is to figure out which staff member last edited a specific record. And then we have our bookings count. So I think the bookings count is essentially what tells you how many bookings it's returning. This is not so important. This is just as a safety measure. Uh, I'm not sure why I put this in. Really don't need this, but it just tells you how many bookings is being returned at the moment. Let's say if you are putting in, I don't know, 200. So per page, we are going to have 200 items, even though we don't have 200 bookings. Let's see what shows up. So as you can see at the moment, we only have 68 bookings right now. So yeah, it returns the count of the bookings that is being returned. So yeah, that is what is going on over here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this function. And I'm also going to go ahead, delete this function as well. And I'm going to activate this one here and switch this on. So what I've just walked you through is basically what's happening over here and here. And that is for upcoming bookings. Now, let's say if the booking, now if type of says all bookings, then we are going to follow this over here. And this is basically the same exact copy of what you have seen over here. But the only key difference is that we have additional functions here, additional functions like over here, if I switch over to all bookings, you'll notice that we have an additional filter over here, arrival status. And that's exactly what we have over here. We have this arrival status here. So we have full table, arrived, full tables. So like I mentioned before, this booking here, all bookings are meant for all the bookings. We don't have any specific criteria for this. This includes bookings that have been made in the past, in the present, and in the future. So yeah, that's what we have for this functionality here. So that's what this conditional is here for. Now, in case if you're wondering, why do we have a separate conditional over here? What is this accomplishing? So as you can see, if I open this up, you'll notice that we have upcoming bookings. We're storing that in upcoming bookings. And if your booking type is all bookings, then we're returning all bookings. But the problem is you cannot return upcoming bookings or all bookings in the response because then it becomes a problem. Your response is waiting for values from upcoming bookings and all bookings, which is why we are creating a separate conditional statement. So we're checking what type of booking is coming through. If the booking is upcoming bookings, then we make sure that we create a brand new variable and we input the upcoming bookings data inside that variable, which is this one right here. Or else, if the booking is all bookings, then we make sure that we put in we have the same variable named bookings, but this time, instead of upcoming bookings, we're going to replace that bookings variable with the value of all bookings, which is coming from here. And and the response, all we need is just bookings, which is, if I go to the variable here, bookings, that's it. That's all we need right here. So let's go here and type in, instead of upcoming bookings, I'm going to put in all bookings here. Let's run this. Okay, there we go. I really hope that made sense. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this Xano walkthrough. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. More than happy to clear out any queries you may have. And yeah, looking forward to setting this bookings now on our next tutorial. So I'll catch you on the next one.